Enjoy watching it. Dr. Torres heard the nurse call through his pager. The patient in room 225 is beginning to awaken. Lifting one eyelid after another and shining a light in her eyes, the doctor spoke to her in his usual monotone voice. Mrs. Score, can you hear me? He checked her pulse and heart rate, then glanced at the monitor. Nurse, she's waking up. Check the contacts in her file and call whoever is listed. Tell them it may take 1 to 5 hours, but she's definitely waking up. About 3 hours later, Laura woke up. She was sleepy but already awake. Welcome back to the living. Don't try to talk yet, the nurse said, giving her a clear liquid to drink through a straw. When you feel strong enough, you can sit up, but be patient. You've been asleep for quite some time. Don't worry, your family has been notified, so just relax and let your body fully wake up. You'll feel much better in an hour or two. The nurse again measured Laura's pulse and recorded the results. She shook her head as she felt all the wires and things still attached to her. Laura knew she was in the hospital but couldn't remember why. She saw and heard what was happening around her, but her brain was not yet working properly. Her body felt strange and weak as she looked at the tubes entering her. Don't worry, we'll get all these things out of the way soon. We just want to watch you a little more. Your arms, legs, and the rest of your muscles haven't been used for a long time, so it'll take a little while for them to get used to moving again. I know you have a million questions, but be patient. You've been through a lot and don't need any shocks right now. Just relax, all your questions will be resolved in due time. The nurse smiled again and left the room. Laura could see bright sunlight streaming through the closed blinds. It was daytime, but what time was it? She had lost track of time. As she began to feel a little better, she looked around her room. She saw several magazines, a sweater, and some other personal items. Then Laura noticed a photo of herself and her daughter Randy. It was on the dresser, too far away to reach, but at least she could see it clearly. She looked around the room again to see if there were other photographs, but there were none. She closed her eyes and took a deep breath. I'm alive, she told herself. About 4 hours later, after she had done her best to finish her first real meal, a nurse came into the room. How are you feeling? Better, but next time, can we order Mexican food? Laura asked. This made the nurse laugh. Well, if you've got your appetite back, I think you're strong enough to receive a visitor or two, she said, looking toward the door. There's a young lady standing outside the door who's been waiting here for 3 hours. She's pacing back and forth like a caged animal, and she told me that if I don't let her in soon, I'm going to need 3 orderlies to restrain her. So, if you're ready, I'll let her in. But if your numbers go up, I'll kick her out. Is that clear? Laura nodded and sat up straighter in bed. She was right. Randy burst through the door. Mom! Mom, she screamed with tears in her eyes. She kissed her mother's face and hugged her tightly. I thought we lost you. When they said you might never wake up, I didn't believe them. I said you would fight. How are you feeling? Are you in pain? Do you need something? Questions rained down one after another as she wiped her eyes with her sleeve and sniffed. You've lost a little weight, Randy said, but don't worry. When you get out of here and start eating real food, you'll gain weight quickly. Mom, it's so great to have you back, she said, hugging her tightly again. The doctor told me that if all goes well, you'll probably be able to get out of here by the end of the weekend. God, you look great, Mom. Randy calmed down a little. She was excited to see her mother awake for the first time in over 6 months. It had been a long journey with many difficulties, but now her mother was back, and she would make sure her homecoming was something special. When Randy noticed that her mother was beginning to get nervous and glance at the door several times, Randy's face changed a little. Did she remember? And if she remembered, how long? These were just some of the questions that ultimately needed to be answered. Then Randy remembered what she had been carrying in her purse for the past 2 months. Her father had given it to her and asked her to do this little thing. She agreed, but now that her mother was awake, she wasn't sure she could do it. Does everyone know that I've come out of a coma and am ready to receive visitors, Mom? I called everyone on the way here, but I told most of them to wait a day or two so you wouldn't be overwhelmed all at once, Randy said. I also didn't want you to be interrupted all at once. The doctor told me to make sure you stayed calm and threatened to kick me out if I upset you, so I tried my best not to." When her mother looked at her with a strange expression, Randy realized what would happen next. Laura had a distant look on her face, trying to remember something. Finally, she asked the question Randy had been most afraid of since entering the room. "Please, please, please let it be something else," Randy prayed silently. But Laura asked, "Mom, is he coming?" "No, Mom," Randy said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I called him on the way here, so he knows you woke up, but he said he won't come." Laura looked sad, as if she had expected this but was hoping for a different answer. "Evan said he'll come over tomorrow after work, and Grandma and Grandpa will come over tomorrow night. Your sister Patty is on her way and should be here in about an hour. I told her to give us some time together before she comes." "I'm so sorry," Randy told her, watching as her mother's face fell into sadness. "It's been hard for all of us after the accident, but now things have more or less settled down. Do you want to know what happened in the world while you were sleeping? We elected the first black president. Isn't that great? The economy is still struggling, but it's starting to recover. Your boss said your old job is waiting for you when you're ready to come back. Isn't that great?" Randy tried to avoid this long overdue topic, but she knew it wouldn't go away. Her purse felt as heavy as a 1,000-pound weight, and she finally set it down on the bedside table. Randy knew she shouldn't upset her mother, but it wasn't her fault. They talked about everything and nothing for the next hour. They looked at each other, and Randy mentioned that someone had been there with her almost the entire time. Laura asked how everyone was holding up and apologized for being such a burden. "Mom, you weren't a burden. And if that man hadn't run the red light, none of this would have happened. I don't know if they told you, but what the hell, you don't even know, he died in the accident. The report says he died instantly." This statement brought a sad look to Laura's face. "Well, stop talking about it. You're awake, and you'll be as good as new. I'll make sure you get better. It'll be just like old times." Laura looked at her daughter and said she would never be the same again. Now she remembered how she ended up here, not the accident itself, but what happened during it. She remembered yelling at Ed to slow down, screaming when she saw the truck right before it crashed into them. After that, everything went blank until she woke up this morning. "Do you think Dad will talk to me?" Laura asked. But Randy just shook her head. "Mom, maybe later. Everything was on pause while you were here. It's still too fresh and painful. Maybe in a week or two, Dad will soften up." They both knew it wouldn't happen. "Dad wanted me to give this to you when you woke up," Randy said, handing her a white, unmarked envelope. "I don't think you should open it until at least tomorrow. Aunt Patty will be here soon, and the doctors want you to stay calm. I'll stop by tomorrow morning. Say hi to Aunt Patty for me." As Randy was leaving the hospital, she saw her Aunt Patty enter. "She knows," was the first question from Patty's mouth. "Not yet, but I gave her a letter from Dad. I told her not to read it until tomorrow, but I'm sure she's reading it right now. Maybe I should wait a little before going up to her, give her some time to be alone. You know, Aunt Patty, the last thing she needs right now is to be alone. She's been alone in her head for the last 6 months. Right now, she needs our support, and a lot of it, if she's going to get through the next couple of months. You're probably right. I just don't know how I'm supposed to look her in the eye after everything that's happened in the last couple of months. My parents are still mad at me. Your dad says he never wants to see my face again, and even your brother hasn't forgiven me yet. You're the only one who still talks to me. Aunt Patty, I learned many months ago that judging others does no good. It only breeds anger and hatred. I'm done with both, so go tell your sister you love her, and I'll see you both later." Patty went upstairs and walked slowly down the corridor. She would try to be cheerful and not say a word about Steve. However, when she entered the room, tears were streaming down Laura's face. She tried to leave the doorway, but Laura saw her and, with tears in her eyes and outstretched arms, hugged her. Patty rushed towards her. Over the next half hour, Laura poured her heart out onto Patty's shoulder, and Patty began to cry too. Laura was more exhausted than she could bear. The nurse monitoring her vitals called the doctor, and after moving Patty aside, he administered a pill to calm Laura and put her back to sleep. The doctor wasn't happy when Patty said she wasn't going to leave. He said that Laura would probably sleep until tomorrow morning, so she could sit here, but he gave her a stern warning before leaving: if she gets upset again, I'll limit everyone's visits. She's not in the best shape and needs peace of mind more than anything. The doctor scolded Patty as if he were reprimanding one of his nurses. Patty told him she would just sit in the chair next to the bed and read. He warned her again before leaving, so she wouldn't upset Laura. Little did he know that it was not Patty but the letter Laura was holding that upset her so much. Laura returned to the world of dreams. She looked peaceful as she had for the past 6 months, but this time she was about to wake up to a completely different life. There was a pile of papers on the floor next to her bed. Patty picked them up and placed them on her lap. She looked at the first page and shuddered. No wonder Laura was so upset. Flipping through the pages, she found one wet with tears and realized that Laura had read this far before losing strength. Patty felt deeply for her sister, but at the same time, she was angry with herself. It shouldn't have ended this way, but knowing Steve, it was the only possible outcome. She turned off the overhead light and turned on the small lamp next to the bedside table. This provided enough light to see what was written on the pages. Luckily, all the pages were stapled together, so she went back to the first page and started reading. "Oh God," was all she could say to herself after reading just the first paragraph. "I've been watching and listening to this monitor on and off for the past 3 weeks, but that constant beeping, beeping, beeping sound was on the verge of driving me crazy. I had permission from the hospital to come and go as I pleased, but I was beginning to feel tired from lack of sleep. I was going to go home soon and try to get at least 8 hours of sleep for the first time. The doctors were very optimistic after the operation. They all said they relieved the pressure on the brain, but it would take time for the swelling to go down. Hopefully, it wouldn't take too long, but they couldn't be sure. Does this mean she will wake up?" I asked the doctor. He realized I was begging him to give me the answer I was hoping for. "Mr. Moore, your wife is in a coma, and although it is not a deep coma, it can still last 1 day, 1 week, or 3 months. It is impossible to determine exactly when she will come out of it. Her injuries have been treated, but sometimes the body itself, the head injury, is probably the root cause, and we'll just have to wait and be grateful she's alive." I was grateful that Laura was alive, unlike the driver of the car she was in. He did not wear a seatbelt and suffered the brunt of the impact. Paramedics said he died almost instantly, and they weren't sure about my wife's chances until firefighters pulled her from what was left of the car. So here I sit and wonder why. "Dad," my son Evan shouted as he ran into the room that first day. "How's Mom?" "Ryan's on her way, but she said to call her as soon as I hear anything," I told them. I informed them that their mother had undergone 16 hours of surgery and was doing as well as could be expected. Broken ribs, a head injury, a broken ankle, and multiple fractures completed her list of serious injuries. I told them the main problem was that she had hit her head from the front and side, and the surgeons had to drill holes in her skull to relieve the internal pressure. "Son, I don't understand it all myself, but if you believe half of what they say, your mom will make a full recovery. It will take time, but she will be fine." I wish I could say the same about myself. The children came in every day to see how she was doing. They prayed to God that she would wake up. I became a regular visitor to the hospital for the first couple of weeks, eating almost all my dinners in my wife's room. I would stop at McDonald's and get Chinese food or bring a large pizza to share with the nursing staff. Basically, I was just marking time until she woke up. "How's Laura?" asked my boss, Keith. "She's recovering, and the doctors say she should wake up any moment." I lied about that part. "She's in our prayers," he said, patting me on the shoulder. "If you need more time, just tell me." Thanks for the offer, but being here at work helps me stay sane and a little distracted. It's the only place where I cannot think about everything and feel somewhat normal. "Well, if anything happens, just let me know." I thanked him again. Everyone was too kind to me. 5 days after the accident, I was at the police station to get a copy of the accident report. I could have gotten it sooner, but I needed time to collect my thoughts before reading what it said. The police report stated that the Lincoln limousine carrying Laura was traveling at a high rate of speed on Boyle Street. The car ran a red light at the intersection of Boone and Fifth Avenue. The UPS truck, which had a green light, crashed into the side of the limousine. There were brake marks on the road, but the UPS driver said that by the time he saw the car, it was too late to stop. The driver estimated that the collision occurred at a speed of approximately 25 to 30 miles per hour. The driver of the limousine, Mr. Edward Carver, was pronounced dead at the scene, and his body was removed by the medical examiner. I thought for a moment and could not remember this person. I looked at his home address and saw that he lived completely on the other side of town from our house. Later that night, I found on the internet that he was married to a woman named Carol and had an 8-year-old daughter. When I arrived at the hospital after work, I found Randy giving my wife a hand and foot massage. "Dad, I read that physical stimulation can sometimes help a person come out of a coma. Why don't you massage her other arm?" she said, handing me the massage oil. We massaged her for over an hour before we stopped. I plan to do this a couple of times a week until she wakes up. I also recorded her favorite songs and loaded them onto her iPod. I bought headphones and asked the nurse to play them every night. "That should work, honey." The doctor said it would take time. Her brain hasn't fully healed yet, it's only been 3 weeks since the accident. I hope you sue the UPS truck driver. He could have killed Mom. "Honey, the driver of the car your mom was in ran a red light. It was his fault." "Great, and he's dead. What an idiot. What was he even thinking? Have you contacted his widow yet, Randy? She just buried her husband. God, leave the poor woman and her daughter alone to mourn him. I guess you're right. I'm grateful Mom is still alive." I didn't say anything. The only thing that wasn't mentioned in the police report was that I was in the car right behind them and saw it with my own eyes. 3 weeks earlier, I sat at my desk finishing up my production schedule for the rest of the week. I leaned back in my chair, stretched, and looked at my watch, 11:21. At that moment, an idea came to mind: why not surprise my wife and invite her to dinner? Yes, it was going to be a boring day as the schedule was set, so I decided to take a couple of hours off and surprise my wife. Laura worked 25 minutes from my office, and I figured that if I left now, I would arrive in time for lunch. I thought about stopping and buying something along the way, but I decided that I would pick her up and she would choose where to eat. This is going to be so cool, I thought as I weaved through the pre-lunch traffic. I was stuck at one traffic light and was on the verge of calling her, but I held back. I wanted to see her face when I walked in. As they say on TV, priceless. It was 5 minutes past 12 when I turned the corner in front of her building, just in time to see her get into a black Lincoln limousine. "Damn, I'm late," I said, hitting the steering wheel. She's probably having a business lunch with a supplier. I was kicking myself for not calling and was about to go back to work when I saw it, a kiss. It wasn't a passionate tongue kiss, most likely just a peck, but it was a kiss nonetheless. Now I had another reason to be here. They started moving, and I joined the flow right behind them, my brain bombarding me with questions to which I had no answers. I'm probably not the most patient or reserved person in the world because at the first traffic light, I got out of the car, ran to the driver's window, and tapped the glass with the back of my fist. The driver's puzzled expression was nothing compared to the horror I saw on Laura's face. "Open the damn door!" I shouted through the glass. The traffic light switched to green, and the car rushed forward, accelerating. I ran back to my car. Although everyone around me was honking, I didn't hear anything. I focused on the black Lincoln weaving through the slow lunch traffic ahead. It took me no more than 2 minutes to catch up with them because I was flashing my high beams, trying to get them to stop. That's when he stepped on the gas. I stopped at a red light while he was trying to get through the intersection. Trying, that's the key word. The UPS truck hit their car with a loud thud. He pushed her across the intersection. I saw the initial collision, but both cars immediately disappeared from my field of vision. I just sat there, not believing what was happening. When I came to my senses and got out of the car, I heard the howl of police sirens. Someone was yelling at me to move my damn car. About 30 people had already gathered around the wrecked car and truck. I got back in and parked my car at the curb. I was afraid of what I would find when I approached the car. I pushed my way through the crowd and walked over to Laura's side. There was blood everywhere, and I could see that she was unconscious. I tried to open the door, but it was locked. Before I could break the window, a group of police and medical workers arrived. All of us, including me, were pushed back while the rescue crew worked to get them out of the car. They had to use hydraulic shears to open the doors. I saw that the driver was in terrible condition, and after a few minutes, he was put on a stretcher and covered with a sheet. The sheet absorbed the blood, and I realized he was dead. They worked on Laura for about 15 minutes. A paramedic was inside with her while 2 firefighters tried to move the dashboard away from her. When they shouted that a stretcher was needed, my heart sank. She was alive. "My name is Stephen Moore," I told one of the paramedics. "That's my wife." "Which hospital will she be taken to?" "To the general district. It's the closest one, and she needs immediate help." "Do you want to go with her in the ambulance?" "No, I have a car." "I'll meet them there," I replied, rushing to my car. They were ahead of me, but not by much. At the reception desk, I told them who I was and provided all the necessary information. They informed me that she had already been taken away for surgery and indicated where I could wait. I must have sat there quietly, emotionless and in a daze, for at least the next couple of hours. The nurse came to check on me once to see how I was doing and a second time after I gave her the completed forms. "How long will she be in the operating room?" "I can't say for sure, but it will take at least a few more hours. Your wife suffered multiple injuries, but don't worry, she has the best surgeons on our staff." She smiled at my glassy eyes and went to the next person. I didn't want to call our kids until I knew something specific, so I waited and waited for the doctor to come out through those damn swinging doors. "Mr. Moore, they just finished," the nurse told me. "The doctor will be out in about 20 minutes to tell you how she's doing." Half an hour later, a doctor in green operating scrubs gave me details of her condition and what I should expect. They were going to keep her sedated because they didn't want her to move. Her head was fixed to prevent her from moving, and then he told me that they had to drill holes in her skull. "Mr. Moore, it's not as bad as it sounds, and your wife came through the surgery well. She's not out of the woods yet, but everything went as expected. We'll know more in about 12 to 24 hours. Go home and rest. There's nothing you can do here." He was right, but I stayed anyway. "Evan, it's Dad," I said into my cell phone. "Mom had an accident." I talked to him while he got dressed and went to me. He said he would call Randy and see me in about 20 minutes or less. "Drive carefully. I don't want to visit 2 people here." He arrived, and Randy arrived. I told them everything I knew. After 3 cups of coffee, I convinced them to go home and rest. I said that I would stay until she left the intensive care unit and was transferred to the ward. "I'll call you if anything changes," I told them. "Go home and get some sleep. There's nothing you can do now anyway." I almost had to physically kick them out. When the doctor told me the next day that Laura had fallen into a coma, I wondered what else could go wrong. However, after the second day, when I heard from others that falling into a coma after such an accident was not uncommon, I wanted to scream. This continued day after day, week after week, without any change in her condition. She was healing, but she was still in that damn coma. I looked at her for hours. She looked so peaceful, with dozens of tubes and wires sticking out of so many parts of her body. The wounds on her face and forehead were almost completely healed, but she would probably want to have plastic surgery to reduce their visibility. I went to work, spent evenings in the hospital, and came home only to sleep. Life was terrible. If it weren't for that late call one evening after returning from the hospital, I would still be stuck in the same routine. "Mr. Moore," a female voice asked from the other end of the line with some uncertainty. "Yes, this is Stephen Moore. How can I help you?" I answered in my now usual tired voice. "Mr. Moore, my name is Carol Carver. My husband is Edward Carver." I stopped her there. "Mrs. Carver, I know who you are, and let me take this opportunity to tell you how sorry I am for you and your daughter." "Thank you. May I ask you about your wife?" "She's still in a coma, but the doctors said they expect her to come out of it soon and make a full recovery." "Thanks for asking," I replied. "Mr. Moore, I need to ask you a sensitive question. "I know this may be inappropriate, but I need to ask," she said, her voice shaking but getting louder. "Why was your wife in the car with my husband?" I froze for a minute. "That really is the $10,000 question," I eventually answered. Over the next hour, we talked, or rather, exchanged bits of information. If, and I emphasize if, they were having an affair, neither of us knew about it. Ed wasn't supposed to be back in town until late that evening. When they called me, I said they had the wrong Edward Carver. My Ed's plane wasn't supposed to land until 9:30 that night. When the police confirmed his identity with his driver's license and credit cards, I lost my composure. I thought about telling her that a lot of what happened had to do with me, but she probably would have just hung up. In that case, I would never have known whether the affair was real or whether he was just a close work friend. "Carol, what exactly did your husband do?" "He worked for Canon. He rented copiers and printers for companies in the Southeast. Last I heard, he was finishing up business in Mon, Georgia, and was supposed to be home around 10:45 that evening. I didn't discuss it with his boss since I was still on his health insurance for another 3 months. I can't jeopardize that in any way. Have you checked his emails and text messages on his phone? I got his laptop and cell phone from the impound lot, and although your wife's company is listed there, I didn't find anything unusual. I don't want to believe he cheated on me, but at this point, I just want to know for sure. Carol, why don't I look up some information on my own and call you back in a couple of days? Maybe there was something, but to what extent, I'm not sure." We exchanged phone numbers, and I began my own investigation. I didn't find anything. If they were having an affair, I couldn't find any evidence. The only time we spent apart, other than work, was when she and her sister went out to dinner or shopping together. Sometimes I even joined them, so I knew there was nothing suspicious there. On Friday night, I searched through our bedroom, office, and garage looking for something. I didn't know what exactly I was looking for, just something unusual. No emails, text messages, cute lingerie I'd never seen before, or undocumented expenses like hotel rooms. I didn't find anything. Thank God. I even went so far as to go to her work and look at her desk. I used the excuse that I had lost one of Laura's credit cards and needed to find it or report it stolen. As I said, nothing. I talked to Carol and even took her out to lunch to compare notes, but she didn't think it was appropriate given the circumstances, so we just talked on the phone. After about 6 weeks, neither of us could find any connection between the two other than that Ed's company owned a rental copier at Laura's place of work. They probably just went to lunch to discuss renewing the lease, I said, not really believing my words. After all, I saw the kiss. If it had been a kiss on the cheek, like between friends, I would have forgotten about it a long time ago, but this was not the case. It was a kiss on the lips, and it looked like it wasn't the first time. It was too automatic and natural, as if it was expected. "You don't believe it any more than I do," Carol said. "Neither of us found anything. There are no connections between them. Steve, deep down, I know there was something, but you're probably right. Anyway, what difference does it make now? I just wish I could close this chapter. You have your wife, even though she's in a coma. She is still alive. My husband is dead, buried but not forgotten. Now when I hear someone say what a good husband and father Ed was, I feel sick because I think he may have cheated on me, and it's driving me crazy. I guess it doesn't matter now, but can you do me a favor? If and when your wife wakes up, please find out for me what really happened. I think it doesn't matter to me or you right now, but these intrusive thoughts will drive me crazy. If he cheated, well, he paid the ultimate price. However, if he didn't cheat, I don't want to feel angry towards him for the rest of my life. Do you understand what I mean? Don't worry, I'll get some information for you because I need it too." This is how life continued for the next few months. I went to work, to the hospital, and finally home to sleep, day after day. It was possible to set the clock according to my schedule. Then, out of the blue, Carol called. Steve, Ed's work sent a box with some personal items that I missed, along with some mail that went directly to his work. Among all of this were 2 Visa bills for an account I knew nothing about. Apparently, he rented a room at the Hilton Hotel near the city center once a month. The only problem was that he had to be on a business trip these days. This new information brought me back to reality. Carol, can you give me the last 3 or 4 dates, and I'll try to match them with what we were doing during that time? She gave me the last 4 dates, and I said I would contact her. I can remember what I did 2 weeks ago, but the last date was almost 18 weeks ago. I went home and looked at our kitchen notebook, flipping through the pages behind a bottle of Corona, trying to remember. I could not remember this date, but found that she and her sister went to the restaurant on a previous date. Then I remembered something Carol said. She checked Ed's planner. Everyone at Laura's work wanted to know how she was doing, and the only answer I could give was that she was stable but not changing. This time, I knew exactly what I was looking for and found it in her desk drawer, her planner. I took it and went back to the car. On the way home, I stopped for Chinese food because cooking for one was becoming a real challenge. With our kitchen calendar, her work planner, and the dates Carol gave me, I began to compare. Of the 4 dates, Laura went to dinner with her sister on one, and they went shopping together on another. On the other 2 dates, I had no idea what was going on, and they didn't fit into the big picture. I called Carol. I have good news and bad news, I told her. On 2 of the dates you gave me, my wife was with her sister, but I couldn't find anything on the other 2. Are you sure she was really with her sister? Now Carol had opened a new can of worms. I guess I can't guarantee this 100%, but they did date each other over the years. Steve, that's not what I'm asking, and you know it. Could her sister lie for her if Laura was having an affair? Damn, why won't this all go away? I can't know that for sure. I know her sister well enough, but I don't know if she would lie for her or not. Steve, I know I'm getting annoying, but I'm trying to find some kind of explanation for my marriage and what was once my wonderful life. I can't tell you what to do next, that's up to you. But I would definitely like to know if this happened to me. Call me if you find anything. I wanted it all to just disappear and die, but Carol wouldn't let it go away. However, the next step would be extremely difficult and could radically change my life. 3 bottles of Corona gave me just enough courage without making my brain too dull. I thought about doing it face to face but immediately dismissed the idea. I didn't want Laura's sister, Patty, to see the look on my face when I hooked her and was ready to throw. I gulped when I heard her answer her cell phone. I forgot that she would see who was calling. Steve, did something happen? I forgot that she sees who is calling, not Laura. There's no change, and the doctor said she could come out of it any day. Of course, that's what they've been telling me every day for months. What can I do for you tonight? I released all the tension from my line and prepared to cast the hook. I know about Laura and Ed. I stopped at this statement and waited for her reaction. Who is Ed? And what's wrong with Laura? Steve, I don't know what you're talking about, was her cautious answer. I guess you know, Patty, since you were her alibi all those times. How could you? I felt the hook pierce deep into her flesh. Steve, you're wrong. Laura would never. I interrupted her. Ed's wife has hotel receipts, and on each of these dates, my beloved wife conveniently spent time either dining or shopping with you. If it weren't for the cameras in the hotel, I would never have believed it even myself. Now I can hardly believe that 2 people I loved so deeply have been deceiving me all this time. I lied through my teeth, but there was only silence on the other side of the phone. Steve, it was just one time. Nonsense. I know of at least 4 occasions when she met him for a night. How stupid do you think I am? I changed my mind. I was actually quite stupid. How could I not notice and not know that my wife was cheating on me all this time? I suppose when you're in love, it does make you deaf, blind, and stupid, but I won't be anymore. Steve, she was going to leave him the day of the accident. You have to believe it. He became too clingy, and what started out as innocent flirting went too far. You have to believe me. Patty, I saw them when Ed picked Laura up from work that day. I watched her get into his damn car and kiss him like she was meeting her long-lost love. Damn it, I followed them until we were stopped at a traffic light. Then I got out of the car to confront them, but when he saw me, he sped up. I was there when he ran the red light and got hit by a damn truck. So don't try to tell me she was going with him to break up. The only thing she thought about was what they would do in that room. I was screaming now. Steve, I'm so sorry. Laura loves you, and it was just a stupid regret on her part. Please don't do anything until she explains it to you. You mean lie to me, don't you? I have to admit, you played well. I never would have thought that my loving wife was capable of cheating on me and that my sister-in-law helped her do it. You disgust me. The telephone connection died along with my marriage. 20 minutes later, Bob, Patty's husband, called. Steve, I sure as hell didn't know what they were doing there. You have to believe it. If I had known, I would never have tolerated what the party did. You have my sincere apologies for what happened to you, and I can ensure this doesn't happen again. He was right about that. Thanks, Bob. I didn't think you knew, but you don't have to worry anymore. Steve, I know you're really angry right now, but don't do anything you might regret. Give yourself a couple of days to cool down, and if you need someone to talk to or drink with, I'm at your disposal. I thanked him and told him there was nothing I could do at the moment. Laura was still in a coma, but I told him to tell his wife to stay away from me. I drank 2 more beers and then went to bed. I didn't sleep, I just looked at the black ceiling. Around 10 o'clock on Thursday morning, I called Carol and invited her to lunch the next day. I chose a place where I could get a semi-private room because I knew there would be a lot of screaming, and I warned the waiter to leave us alone unless he heard gunshots. When Carol arrived, she ordered a drink. I told the waiter to bring her another and leave us alone. Carol, you were right. Ed and my wife were having an affair. Her sister was covering for her, and with Ed on the road, it was easy for us to be fooled. That idiot, how could he do this to me, to us? Well, at least now I know what kind of person he really was. I only wish I could face him and spit in his face, make him suffer the way he made me suffer. Carol, there's something else I haven't told you, and I want you to listen to me completely before you speak. I don't know how to say it any easier, so I'll just say it. I looked at her one more time before starting. I saw them together the day of the accident. I was going to surprise Laura and invite her to lunch, but when I arrived at her work, she was getting into your husband's car. Through the back window of the car, I saw her kiss him and began to follow them. A few blocks later, I got out of the car to run into them, and from that moment, everything went downhill. Your husband saw me and sped up, and my wife was freaking out in the front seat. I stopped at the traffic light they passed. I saw the UPS truck hit them, and I saw the firefighters get your husband out of the car. I'm so sorry, I was indirectly involved in the accident, but I never wanted that. She started screaming and crying at the same time. Why didn't you tell me about this months ago? You knew they were deceiving us, and you didn't say anything. Carol, all I saw was one kiss. That's all. But she continued to attack me, saying that I killed her husband and it was my fault. Carol, expletive, off. I didn't give your husband permission to sleep with my wife, and I certainly didn't put his foot on the gas and make him run a red light. I was trying to figure out what the hell was going on, and if this was what I thought, I would have stopped it right there. I was shaking. I was so angry at Carol, at Laura, at Ed, at everyone for everything. But your wife is still alive, and my husband is dead. You can get answers and find comfort. What about me? I'll just have to wonder why he did it. She continued to cry. I walked around the table and tried to console her. She tried to push me away, but I insisted. I know you don't want to hear this, but in a way, you're in a winning position now. You can move on, find someone else, get married again, and never see him again. But because of the kids, I'll have to see the face of my cheating wife and constantly remember what we had and what we lost. I can find out the reason, but what will it change? My marriage is over, and I will have to grieve just like you. We ordered and ate lunch, for that matter, for a different reason. Since we were already here, I stopped drinking alcohol because I didn't want to add a DUI to my existing problems. After about 15 minutes, we started talking again. We had a connection because neither of us ever expected it to happen. For the first time, we talked about something other than our spouses. She told me about her daughter, and I told her about my 2 children. If it weren't for the real reason for our meeting, it would have been a very pleasant lunch. Carol described her marriage as good but sometimes difficult, as Ed was often on the road. Steve, every marriage has problems, and ours was far from perfect, but I never expected to be caught off guard like this. If only he had told me he was unhappy or unsatisfied. I know we could have worked it out. You can't solve your problems by bringing in a third person. I'm sorry I exploded at you. I'm just so angry all the time now, but I just want to look him in the eyes, shake him, and ask what he was even thinking about. I know it will get easier over time, but what should I do until then? I think you're doing what I'm doing, taking it one day at a time. Now that everything is out there, I'm going to have to make some tough decisions that will affect not only Laura and me but a lot of other people as well. And I, like you, want to know why she threw a great marriage away with someone else. But until she wakes up, I won't know. We finished lunch and decided against dessert. Carol wasn't sure what she would do moving forward, but at the top of her list was selling the house. She said she couldn't afford it anymore, and it held too many memories. I'll probably move back to Ohio and live with Mom and Dad for a while. Thank God life insurance and Ed's pension paid off all our debts, so I can start over with a clean slate without any debt hanging over my head. I've only been working part-time and told my boss yesterday that I was leaving at the end of the week. I've heard it a million times before and said it myself. I'm sorry this all happened. You and your daughter don't deserve this kind of hardship. She thanked me, and we left together. Are you okay to drive? I asked. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you for not hiding the truth from me. Even though I didn't want to hear it, it's better to know than to continue to think that I could be wrong. She kissed me on the cheek. Don't get lost, and good luck with your wife, she said as she got into the car and drove away. I'll need more than just luck when it comes to Laura. For the next 3 days after work, I came home, ate dinner, and had a few beers, starting to formulate a plan. When Randy called me on the 4th day and asked if something was wrong, I said I was looking into the problem. On Wednesday evening, when I didn't show up at the hospital, Randy and Evan came to see me. Okay, Dad, what's going on? You haven't been to see Mom for almost a week. Is there something you're not telling us? Randy asked, looking scared of what I might tell him. Dad, we're not kids anymore, Evan added. I wasn't going to bring it up right now, but I thought, what the hell, it's going to come out eventually anyway. Kids, there's something I didn't want to tell you yet, but I need to explain. Randy began to cry. She's dying, isn't she? That's why you weren't there. When did you find out? Why didn't you tell us? Tears started flowing. Calm down. Your mother is not dying. Where did all this come from? I asked. Well, you haven't been with her all week, and I just thought that since you told me you were dealing with a problem, it had to do with Mom. Kids, I think you should sit down because what I'm about to say may require a stiff drink. They both refused and told me to continue. I looked them both in the eyes and began, Your mom has been cheating on me for quite some time. She was with him when she had that accident. Randy was shocked by the thought. No, that's impossible. Mom would never cheat on you. She loves you too much. Look, I thought so too, but I was following her and her lover in my car when they got into that accident. They just looked at me like I was crazy. I spent the next hour sharing everything Carol and I had learned, from the moment I approached them at work to my conversations with Patty. They were shocked, just like I was a few weeks ago. Dad, there must be some mistake. You know Mom. She would never do what you're suggesting, Randy defended her, hoping I was wrong. Evan wasn't so nice. Dad, she may be my mom, but I can't justify what she did to you and Aunt Patty. She's just as guilty as Mom. I hope I don't see her until I cool down, otherwise, I'll lose control and tell her what I really think about her. I wonder if she cheated on Uncle Bob. Questions rained down from all sides. Kids, the only thing I can tell you for sure is that I'm done with your mom. I can't divorce her right now because she's on my health insurance, but I don't consider her my wife anymore. I'll start filling out the paperwork, but I won't submit it until she comes out of her coma. Dad, don't do anything until you talk to Mom. I know things look bad right now, but maybe there's some other explanation, Randy begged me. You mean they just rented a room at the Hilton to talk and play board games? I didn't mean to offend my daughter, but damn it, we all know what she was doing there. I told her I would take it slow. This calmed her down a little. I was glad when they left. I didn't want to have this conversation, but I was glad everyone knew now. What I didn't expect was when Evan got into an argument with Laura's parents on his next hospital visit. They noticed that I no longer came to see their daughter, and then he told them the whole dirty truth without leaving out a single detail. I heard they were shocked. One of the nurses had to tell them to lower their voices when Evan called Laura a cheater, and her father objected. "My daughter is not like that," her grandfather shouted back at Evan. "Steve must have done something, Grandpa. My father never did anything to my mother. He always treated her like a loving wife. Why she decided to take a lover is a mystery, but I will never forgive her for what she did to my father and our family." Things seemed to go downhill from there. Patty sent me an email trying to explain the who, what, and why, but after reading it, I simply replied that I never wanted to talk to her again and deleted it. How stupid did she think I was? So, from that night, I began to build a new life. I didn't try too hard to tell anyone about my problems, but when my boss kept asking how Laura was doing, I pulled him aside and gave him the short version. If he sympathized with me before, now he sympathized with me twice as much. Everyone I told felt sorry for me, but I began to come to terms with it. I was going to share everything I understood. However, if she died, it would be even more difficult to resolve everything, so I decided to wait. The only thing I did one weekend was write a letter to Laura. I expressed all my feelings, including my pain, and asked Randy's daughter to tell his mother if and when she came out of her coma. I had already stopped going to the hospital, and Evan rarely came there either. At Randy's insistence, Randy thought it would be best if I gave Laura the letter myself. But when I said I never wanted to see her again, he finally agreed. Soon after, Laura woke up. Now that Laura was back asleep, Patty began to read the letter Steve had written to her. "Laura, if you're reading this, it means you've finally come out of your coma, which, unfortunately, I can't say I'm glad about. I don't know how many times since that fateful day I wished for you to die in that accident. Your look out the driver's window that day said it all. You were caught. Ed really was a dumbass, wasn't he? Only a real idiot would try to drive through a busy intersection at lunchtime. If you don't already know, he died on the spot. It's just a shame I couldn't reshape his face properly, but the UPS truck beat me to it." Patty and I had a serious talk, and as you can imagine, she is no longer one of my favorites. Ed's wife found the credit card he used to rent your love nest. After checking the dates with your planner, we put 2 and 2 together. Patty was still lying to me right before I told her I didn't want to talk to her anymore. Bob called back and apologized for his stupid wife, but the damage was already done. I have to admit, you were good, I never would have guessed. Even after Carol made the accusation that you were both deceiving us, I told her that she was very mistaken. Even now, I still find it hard to believe how I could have been so naive and blind. It still upsets me. I guess when you love someone as much as I loved you, you just never think that this person could do such a thing. I hope it was worth it. Just so you know, the kids know everything now too. Randy took the view that everyone makes mistakes and essentially forgave you, but Evan and your dad had more than one heated argument after he called you a cheater in front of him. Your parents aren't happy either, but they'll forgive you in the end. For Evan, things will be different. Be careful around him because he, like many others, is angry at you right now and doesn't understand what you're up to. As far as I'm concerned, we're done. The moment you walked through the door with your new lover, Ed, it was all over for us. Patty tried to tell me it was just one time until I told her what I knew. As I said, you both truly deserve an Oscar for your performances as a loving wife and caring sister. Don't wait for my voice, you're still on my health insurance until we iron out the final details. This way, you won't be saddled with thousands of dollars in medical bills. The house is going to be sold, and I've thrown our bed to the curb. Probably, you had an intimate with the guys in our marital bed, and as soon as I found out, I couldn't bring myself to sleep in it anymore. We can divide all our assets equally, and everyone will be left with their own 401k. I strongly advise you not to create problems or contest this divorce, otherwise, I will drag your name through the mud. I will tell everyone what you really are. No one at your job knows anything yet, and your job is waiting for you when you get better. As for me, I never want to see your face again. I don't want to talk to you or have you write to me anymore. At first, I wanted to know why. Why did you do this? Was it me, or something I did or didn't do? But then I thought, To hell with it. I finally realized that it doesn't matter why, just that you did it. If you wanted to leave so badly, I would have been sorry, but I would have let you go. Now all I want is for you to just disappear from my life. I know there will be some problems in the next couple of months, but I will send you the name of my lawyer when I find him so you can contact him and not me. Like I said, I was waiting for you to wake up or die, whichever came first, before I started doing this. So, as a goodbye, I hope you have a miserable life, and when you look in the mirror and see all those damn scars, I hope you feel a burning pain for what you lost. I'm not going to hold myself to high standards because you certainly didn't. I'm angry, bitter, and, as I said before, I wish you had died in that damn accident. He didn't even sign it. Patty didn't blink once the entire time she read the letter. Steve had described everything quite accurately, and although she knew the intimate details of Laura's affair, she would never share them with anyone else. She believed that if blood cannot be trusted, who can you trust? But Laura didn't read the letter to the end, and Patty didn't know how she would react when she finally finished reading it. Patty was worried about Laura. Patty also knew that Steve had no chance of taking her back. Well, at least she'll still have a job when she gets out of the hospital, she told Laura. More than once, she had warned Laura that she was playing with fire, but Laura insisted that Steve would never know. She fully admitted that the night wasn't nearly as good as it had been with Steve, but their intimate life had become boring and she needed to spice things up a bit. However, as it turned out, it was not the heat but rather the acidity. Laura told her that she was going to end the relationship because Ed was becoming too pushy and demanding more and more time with her. He was no longer content with just casual meetings on the side, now he wanted dinners and evenings with her. It was now common knowledge, at least in their family, that she had cheated on Steve, and Patty only hoped that their parents and Evan would eventually forgive her. After all, a family is still a family. When Laura woke up, she was sure that it was all one of those crazy dreams caused by medication. She had flickered in and out of consciousness for the past 36 hours. When she noticed Patty sleeping in the chair next to her bed, she felt relieved to see someone with whom she had shared so much of her life. Laura touched Patty's shoulder and saw her flinch and then look at her. "How do you feel?" asked Patty. "Much better." "Have you been here all night?" "Yes, I fell asleep a little after 10 in the evening." "Forget about me." "How are you feeling?" "I needed that sleep. I had the craziest dreams. Luckily, they were just nightmares." Then she saw the letter on Patty's lap. "Oh damn, it wasn't a dream," she said, starting to cry again. "Laura, look at me," Patty told her calmly. "If you don't calm down, they'll calm you down again. Do you understand?" Laura nodded. "What you need to understand is that Steve knows everything. Even though you were careful, you left marks on paper, and now everyone knows. He doesn't want you back and was waiting for a divorce until you woke up. Patty, maybe there's a chance. If I could just talk to him, I could make him understand that it was just a stupid hookup and just an intimate. Maybe he'll give me another chance. Could you talk with him?" "Laura, I'm one of the last people he'd want to talk to. Remember, you used me as an alibi. Hell, it took me weeks for my husband to forgive me after he found out what I did. Bob thought I was cheating on him too. No, the only one you have a chance with is Randy. She forgave us both and kept Steve informed of your condition. Steve might listen to her, but I really doubt it. I told you what will happen if he finds out." I know, but it was so tempting and exciting in the beginning. Then it just became something I did when Ed was in town, feeling like a young girl at school again. This time I was going to go with him as he asked. I know it was stupid, and I let the situation get out of control, but I never thought I would get caught. I never felt love for Ed, and I never loved Steve less. Laura, that was the problem. You didn't think. She was right. Over the next 2 days, Laura was poked, tested, and examined. Everything was normal or normal enough for her to be discharged. She will need additional surgery on her right arm and lower left leg to remove small bone fragments, but this could be done at any time in the future. Randy was with her every step of the way and prepared the bedroom in her apartment in anticipation of her mother. I took most of your clothes from the house, and Dad left your car with me a couple of days ago. He paid for the insurance until the end of the year. Dad is leaving town in a week or so and said you could come into the house and take everything you want. He said he wants to put it up for sale as soon as everything is cleared out. I have a bunch of cards at home for you from, I think, everyone you know. After a week, I told everyone to stop sending flowers. Your room started to look like a flower shop. Tomorrow morning I'll pick you up. Evan has a van, it will be easier to get in and out than my little car. Get some rest tonight, we have a big day tomorrow. With that, Randy left, at least for the time being. Laura spent her last night in the hospital thinking about what she had done and trying to figure out a way to bring Steve back, if possible, or at least get him to talk to her. Maybe after a good night's sleep, she could come up with a plan. After 3 weeks at Ryan's, they were able to move back into the house. Steve and several of his friends had left town. Laura and Randy had the whole of Saturday and Sunday to look around. The house was in disarray, partial ash and broken glass in the family fireplace caught their attention. Photos, all the photographs from all the years of their marriage, were there. Most of them had been reduced to coal, but a few around the edges still remained. It looked like Steve had just dumped them all in there and set them on fire, just like Laura did with her marriage, she thought. Wedding photos, pictures from family trips, and even 2 family portraits were gone. How could Dad do this? If he didn't want them, I would have taken them. Now we have nothing from all our vacations and trips. Randy looked sad as she looked at the charred remains in the fireplace. Randy, I think that was the idea, Laura said, sitting on the hearth and pulling out whatever was left. Apart from the furniture, there wasn't much left. They filled 3 large trash bags with things, and as Randy loaded them into her car, Laura looked around one last time. 24 years together and all that was left were a few things, a few mementos, and 2 wonderful children, one of whom still didn't speak to her much. The last thing Laura took was the box Steve gave her for their first Christmas. There was little money, and they agreed not to give each other gifts, but apparently, he saw the way she was looking at it in the store and somehow found the money. It was the first thing they put up for the holidays and the last thing they took down. She was quite surprised that he didn't burn it too. Since it was old, it would have burned like a match. With one last tear, she closed the door and walked out of her old life, waiting for Randy's car. Over the next 4 months, Steve and Laura settled their shared life. The money, the stocks, and their retirement savings were all gone. When the house was sold, they split the profits, and he filed the papers. Now they were completely separated, so there was nothing left to argue about. Laura tried to see him before it became final, but Randy said it wasn't important to him. He bought a 2-room apartment near the center and moved there without her. Evan eventually came to his senses, but they never became as close as before. A year after the divorce became official, Randy and her boyfriend got engaged, and Laura found a small studio apartment in the city's historic district. She returned to work, and although she had no serious financial problems, the wedding promised to cost more than she could afford on her own. They had dinner on Sunday with Evan, his wife Kate, Randy, her fiancé Dan, and Laura. They discussed the wedding and went through many lists. Here, Evan said, pushing the envelope towards Randy and her mother. Dad wanted me to give this to you. He said it would make things easier for you. Randy opened the envelope and took out a check for $20,000. The short message attached read, "My girl deserves the wedding of her dreams." Randy and Steve had barely spoken for the last 15 months. They had several arguments, and he told her that if her mother was at the wedding, he would not come. That was 3 months ago, and they hadn't spoken since. Randy looked at the check in her hand and turned to her mother. Maybe this means he changed his mind and decided to come. Evan didn't seem as optimistic as Randy and Laura. Mom, even with that, I still think we should have a small wedding. There's no point in going into debt for a wedding and a party that only a few of us will remember. Randy called to thank her father, but he didn't answer. She left a message thanking him for his generosity and informed him that her mother would be present to see her daughter get married. Randy told her mother that he never responded after she left her first message unanswered. Her subsequent emails and calls also went unanswered. It looked like she got her answer, but she sent him an invitation anyway. Evan couldn't and wouldn't tell his mother and sister whether Steve would come or not. If he hadn't come, he would have walked his sister down the aisle and given her away in marriage, and that was how it was rehearsed. The night before the wedding, Randy was glowing with happiness but at the same time felt sad. She hoped against hope that her father would come, but knowing him, the chances were slim. "Tell him I'm not coming," Laura told her daughter. "I had the pleasure of planning your wedding and even saw how everything would happen. He is your father. He deserves the right to marry you. Because of me, he will not come, and I will never be able to forgive myself for this if I ruin the most important day of your life." She told her daughter, "I've come this far without him, a few more steps won't make much of a difference." From day one, I had no intention of going to Ryan's wedding, especially knowing Laura would be there. She turned our marriage into a farce, and I hated her with every fiber of my being. I don't know how many nights I spent praying that something would happen to her or that she would relapse because of the accident. Even the mention of her name made me furious. God, how I hated this woman. It took me 6 months of therapy and anger management classes to get any control over my emotions surrounding Laura. I hoped that she would bail out and skip the wedding after everything she had done to our happy family. But since Randy forgave her and her damn sister, she thought everyone should do the same. Not my rules. Randy convinced me for months, and when she couldn't, Evan started. When I heard the money was running low, I cashed in a bond or two and sent her enough money to make sure it would be a memorable day. When Evan said he would walk her down the aisle and marry her, I felt a pit in my stomach. Damn it, when will this end? 2 days later, and the day before the wedding, I realized it will never end, not until one of us dies. For the rest of our lives, I will have to put up with her for the sake of the children. I hate her passionately, but at least now I can control it. I didn't tell anyone that I was coming. I made sure my tuxedo fit perfectly, and my new haircut made me look good, better than I had in the last 6 months. I parked the car and crept to the back of the church where Evan was waiting. Jesus Christ, Dad, you did it. I'll go tell Randy. You won't do anything like that. I want it to be my surprise and a pre-wedding gift for her. You know Mommy is here, don't you? I'm aware. Why don't you go and sit next to her, and I'll join you after I give up our little girl. He hugged me and said he was glad I came. Randy looked gorgeous, and my heart lit up when I looked at her. It took her a minute or two to notice me while she was looking for her brother. Dad, she screamed and threw herself into my open arms, kissing me. Did you really think I'd miss my daughter's wedding? What kind of father would I be? Now she had everything. As the music started, we waited for our turn to go while the bridesmaids and flower girl did their thing. Ready for this, Dad? I've been ready for this for a long time. Well, let's begin the next chapter of your life. With her hand in mine, we walked proudly down the aisle. None of the guests knew that I had no intention of coming, but the people in the front rows were shocked by my presence, including the groom. However, everyone was smiling as we walked down the aisle. I handed my daughter's hand to Dan, whispered something in his ear, smiled, and sat down next to my son on the first bench. Laura looked at me, smiled, and said, "Thank you," then went back to watching the newlyweds. Within 20 minutes, it was all over. They were introduced as Mr. Dan and Mrs. Randy Cooper and walked down the aisle as husband and wife. We headed to the reception for congratulations. I greeted our guests and thanked them for coming. From time to time, I saw Laura looking in my direction. When our eyes met, she quickly looked away. The celebration passed without incident. The food was good, the music was a little loud for my taste, but I danced with my daughter twice and even with her new mother-in-law once. She said she was glad I finally pulled my head out of my 5th place, her words, not mine. It was about 11 o'clock at night when Laura came up behind me. I was just watching the dancing people, apparently reminiscing, when I heard her voice behind me. Thanks for coming. It meant a lot to Randy. I decided I had to do it, especially after I've given her so much trouble the last 2 years. Plus, I love a good party, especially when I'm paying for it. Just so you know, it was me, not you. You were everything I could have asked for. I'm just sorry I realized it too late. It's all in the past. We can't change what's already been done, so I've moved on with my life and don't hate you anymore. I knew I was lying to be polite. Maybe we could have lunch and talk sometime, but you never gave me a chance to explain myself. I had to make every effort not to rip her head off right there. What did she think? We be friends now? Maybe, but not anytime soon. Besides, I'm dating someone, and I don't think it would be appropriate. With those thoughts, I went to look for Evan. I thanked him for all the help he had given his sister, kissed his wife, and told her not to let him drink too much. She smiled and said they had booked a hotel room. I found Randy and Dan and told them I was leaving. Dad, I love you so much. I saw you talking to Mom. I'm glad you finally made up. I smiled through gritted teeth and told her to have an exciting and fun honeymoon. I handed them $100 bills, just a little extra money to spend. 2 minutes later, I was at the door and heading to my car. I was glad I decided to come, especially after confronting my ex-wife and dealing with myself like a real adult. I had come a long way, and that evening, I finally closed the final chapter of our marriage. For the first time, I felt at peace with myself. In the limousine heading to the airport, a happy Randy exchanged kisses and caresses with her new husband. She was still smiling at how well everything had gone, especially with her parents. She felt quite proud that she had played a big role in getting them to at least be in the same room. It was really great, wasn't it? She asked Dan, kissing him deeply and looking into his eyes. By the way, what did Dad whisper to you at the altar when he handed my hand to you? Dan looked thoughtful. He said if I ever hurt you, he'd chase me like a dog, kill me, and eat my damn heart. Well, I think you better listen to his words. I don't think my dad ever forgets anything, Randy wisely advised. What do you think of our story today? I was very uncomfortable in this story to hear how the husband found out about his wife's infidelity. What is your opinion? Write in the comments. Until new videos.